Welcome into the episode of Patrick Jones Baseball. This week on the podcast, we have Cam Lanzilli. Cam is the pitching coach at Eckerd College down in the Sunshine State of Florida. Really appreciate Cam coming on the show, and he was really good. Just finished recording with him. He's got really good energy. You can tell he's spent a ton of time studying his craft, and he's really passionate about it. And then lastly, he gives some really good insight and advice to families, to players, to coaches in this episode on pitching development and recruiting. And so it's really good. We're going to put his contact info in the show notes, so make sure to go follow him on Twitter. But I think you're going to like this one. So here we go with Cam Lanzilli. All right, Cam, we're now live on the podcast. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
So we're going to get into a lot of different topics because I know you've got a lot of experience. You've been at the professional level. You're at the college level now. But we were texting a little bit this morning, and I think one of the things that I wanted to first start off and ask you about is the recruiting piece of this. And one of the things that you'll see a lot online now is coaches going back to recruiting pitchers specifically who just throw strikes. And I guess I wanted to get some insight from you, since you have the power to recruit and make those offers. Is that actually true based on what you're doing, what other coaches are doing, or is that just a social media phenomenon that has no merit?
No, I love that question. And it's actually something that I've thought a ton about. I've actually had some good conversations with some other people who are on like whether it's recruiting side or analytics side, whatever it is. And first things first, like I always want to think about my own teaching. What am I good at teaching, right? There's things that I favor. We all have preferences. We have preferences as players, coaches, all these things. I think one of the things that's worth noting is like, what is like throwing strikes, right? Is that throwing a baseball in the zone a lot? Like in a bullpen, does this guy throw the ball in zone above 50%, right? I think MLB average for like zone rate is like 48% roughly, we'll call it. And then your strike percentage, you're going to want around 63, 65, 66%. So like, what is throwing strikes, right? We've seen guys like, my favorite example is Hagen Smith, because he actually played with my brother at Arkansas for a bit. But in his big year at Arkansas, his junior year, he was the best pitcher in the country, and he was sub 42% zone rate, sub 42%. That's the best pitcher in the country.
Wow.
Yeah. That like, how does a guy who throws the ball in that square 41.6, 41.7% of the time, how are they the best pitcher in the country? But he throws strikes. He was like 64% strikes, right? So I don't like the term, I don't recruit in the sense of, do they throw strikes? How do they acquire strikes throughout a game, right? You're a starter, you're going to need to acquire a certain amount of strikes in the zone to be able to get through an outing. If you're not doing that quickly, like maybe you fall back on this guy as a reliever, right? He's going deeper in accounts. He's not going to be able to last super long. So one of my other buddies, Quinn Riley, who works for Penn State now, I want to give him a shout out because he had an awesome point. He had an awesome tweet about this the other day, and he actually shot this message to me before he tweeted it. It's like, do you believe enough in your own player development system if you're literally not taking this guy because of one thing that he doesn't do great, right? I'm not recruiting this guy to play tomorrow. Like, you have a whole fall with this guy. You have a whole winter. You're going to, even when you don't have them in the winter, say they go home, you're going to put them around the people that you trust. Like, we have obviously these great connections in the private space now that you can say, hey man, go up the street to X, Y, and Z. He's really good at teaching this skill here. But then like, we have our own player development system where I think, okay, if this guy's not that good at this thing, we're obviously talking about the skill of acquiring strikes right now. Like, how are we going to teach that? How are we going to get this guy there? Because he probably does something else very well. And again, there are outlier cases of this guy is so far away from being playable in this sense. So I'm not really referencing that, but I think there's a lot of elements and a lot of ways that you can look at this. Whenever I think about this, I think about how you can improve a guy's strike rate without even throwing pitches in the zone more, or you can do the simple act of throwing the ball in the box a little bit more.
That I love that. I've never thought of it that way or heard really anybody talk about acquiring strikes. And I think that's really interesting to think about. And I love the example of that the best pitcher in the country at Arkansas, his percentage. And maybe I think you're alluding to this a little bit too, but it makes me starting to think more of even what if the guy in the game is different than the guy in the bullpen, but you see the guy in the bullpen and you know that he's doing maybe one thing a little bit different than he is in the game. And so that can have some carryover too. You can fix that. And then you mentioned earlier, Cam, when we first started this episode, that there's certain things that maybe that you're really good at teaching, and you see something in a guy, you're like, oh, I know I can fix this because of X, Y, and Z. What's an example of that? What do you feel like if you see or you can help a player improve, a pitcher improve, what would that be?
Yeah, so I think one of the easy parts we actually worked with iMotions this year, who did some really important things that we found with focalization. And we found that we had guys who were like, even guys who had huge movement profiles where you think to yourself, like, wow, it's going to be hard to get a sinker with 20 inches of arm side run in the zone a lot, right? But those guys were so exceptional with like limiting head movement, maintaining eyes on the target throughout the linear move, where we had some younger guys who had more simple movement profiles. Like mechanically, you're just like, I don't really see anything that they're doing crazy here that's eliciting such wide results. I think like you can improve so quickly. But the other thing is like just changing a guy's mentality, right? We always talk about like how like a catcher's setup can affect our ability to throw a certain pitch into the zone. So we try to throw pitches to our focal point rather than our target, if that makes sense. So you'll say like a righty side armor who throws very wide sinkers that'll come back 20 inches. If I give this person just a simple location of let's throw this pitch arm side here, right? I'm going to throw, if my target and my focal point is to throw the pitch arm side, this righty is going to hit every righty right in the hip, right? It's just going to happen. And now to limit that, it's like, now you got to learn about your movement profile. So if I throw a pitch to a focal point, where does that pitch typically end up? If my pitch has 20 inches of movement this way, then I'm going to want to throw it in an area where it's going to allow me to get toward the target. We go focal point over target as something to elicit pitches like reaching where we typically want them to. Again, I work with a pitcher who was in the MLB a few years ago, and he's still there right now, who had the biggest fastball miss differential from the target in the MLB, and he threw to a sub-3 that year. Again, we throw to areas, we can't throw to certain spots because the average big league miss is going to be 10 plus inches on every single pitch. So like if a big leaguer is that far away, all we're trying to do is give ourselves the best shot. I think it is like a little bit of a snake oil technique to say that you're going to develop 80 grade command overnight. Like that, some of the guys, the proprioception just comes to them so much quicker, and the autonomy and things like that, where, you know, like if you have plus stuff, if we can get you to 50 command, we're not going to have all 60, 70 tools. Like we just want to get as many toward 50 as possible.
Great info right there. That was really good. I want to dive a little bit deeper into some of those things. But first thing I wanted to clarify, because I think this is fascinating. You had mentioned, what was this stat that pitchers, they were 10 inches off of their actual target?
Yeah. Like in the MLB, and I actually did this when we first started to do this with the Orioles, where would take the actual location on the CSVs from TrackMan and then would tag like a target of where the catcher's glove was. And then you'd try to see like the miss differential. And we were experimenting with just setting the catcher up down the middle for every pitch. It was insane. And then you look at it, and now obviously Savant has so much data now than it did in 2022 or even past then when you already thought it was great. But yeah, the average pitch miss differential from an actual target is going to be, I think it's between 9 and 12 inches, somewhere around there. So it's never going to be perfect in these people who really want to keen in on like pitcher's command and these things and those things. Like the zone is so small now, like trying to be really good at it. And some people are finding a secret sauce to it and to train like proprioception and to train skill acquisition. But at the end of the day, you're just trying to close that gap and be as good with it as you can.
I sometimes think that really good pitching coaches like yourself would also be really good hitting coaches, because you know what the pitchers are trying to do. And some of these stats about, like you said, miss rate, things like that, versus where the catcher's setting up. If you were a hitting coach, what would be the advice you would give your hitters the most, knowing what you know as a pitching coach?
Yeah, shoot. It's funny because I just want to stay on like the mindset that we've elicited so far through this, but like you're facing Hagen Smith, who throws 42% zone rate. Learn from that. If you're not chasing 23% and we're not expanding out of the zone, where is he getting his chase? With the low release, he had that like kind of unique carry, like away from his arm angle. It's like, okay, we cannot chase a fastball up today. Like we just can't. You can only swing at pitches down or below the zone that are fastballs. Yeah, I always, because I actually do our reports for our hitters, and I help our like hitting coaches and our head coach and stuff like that prepare for the pitcher. And I actually know of some Power 5 coaches who are doing the same thing, that are like, hey, the pitcher does this, is like what he's trying to do, and this is how he's going to beat you. Just understanding like what makes this guy successful and how to avoid to allow him to do that. Like what go zones and what areas of the zone. You guys talk so much about swing decisions, right? We're trying to make you a bad swing decision. You're trying to create this unbelievable swing decision score and this swing decision feel throughout a game. And like, we're just trying to make that terrible on you. I think not playing into a pitcher's unique qualities, because every pitcher at a high level is going to have something really good that they do that I don't think a hitter can combat consistently, at least. Like maybe you run into one or two, but consistently throughout a game you can't. And to just not give in to that, and a lot of that comes from them getting you to expand the zone.
All really great stuff. I think some people are going to have some follow-up to what you mentioned about the focal point over the target.
Yeah.
Could you simplify what you mean when you say focal point? And maybe just give like some simple examples, because I think everybody's going to know what target is, because that's always what we've been taught. But focal point, they may not necessarily know exactly what you're referring to.
Just think of a general target, right? If my target is right here, but I'm throwing a sweeper that moves in this direction, right? It's going to move from here. Obviously, I'm at a different angle than you here, but if a righty is throwing it back toward this target and trying to reach this target, right? So I'm going to put the focal point right here. I've actually seen some tools where there are like targets like 10 feet in front of the zone or something like that. We obviously deal with seam shifted weight when pitches move. Some people say late movement, which we know isn't real anymore. It just seam shifted weight. The ball is actually changing its axis. But if my target is here, I'm going to have a focal point in a different spot to reach this target. So if I'm throwing a sweeper, for instance, that I'm trying to get back around this way, I'm going to look right here and try to throw it to this target in the expectation that if it sweeps this way with this much movement, that it'll get back to this target, right? If I'm throwing to this target and I'm just looking at this, now it's my focal point, and I'm going to miss far to the glove side now, right? So we're trying to have our best pitches and our highest stuff pitches in the zone or around our target as much as possible. So that's the way I teach that. Did that make sense?
Yeah,
Or do you
totally.
have
No,
any
that
more?
was really
Yeah.
well explained.
Perfect.
Is that something that you picked up along the way? Did you learn that from somebody? Like, how'd you come up with that?
Yeah, so actually from studying some of the things that I was able to in the past, of learning about like pitch misses and the common miss. I always call it like the common miss for a pitch, right? And we'll take our guys and look at their pitch frequency on a heat map. It's like, okay, your sweeper is landing down in glove side a lot, which is great. You're landing at an 0-2, 1-2 count, but we want to use this pitch a little bit more often, right? Now, how are we going to get that pitch to be in the zone a little bit more so that we find more utility for it, right? Say we're at a 53% strike rate. We want to get that up to 60, 65%. So we're going to start moving that target a little bit more to the arm side so that all of our misses are not off to the glove side. And we're just simply predicating on righties chasing off there, right? So yeah, I think just trying to create like more utility for pitchers' good pitches per se. Not everyone has a good fastball, not everyone has a good slider, but typically you hope somebody has one plus pitch. And yet, like my goal being trying to get that pitch to be used more so that we can keep getting more utility from it. I think learning from the common miss is a weapon that we really want to take advantage of, and just building an education system on it with guys like, hey, we keep missing over here. Let's start moving that pitch this way and give yourself a little bit more room to the arm side, right?
I'd imagine that recruits love talking to you. I'd imagine it's easy if you're a pitcher and you get a call from you. It's got to be an easy sell. I'm sure kids just eat up what you're teaching. and just how you go
No,
about
I
it.
appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't know. I think learning from a lot of other guys, I think there's a lot of really good coaches in the game. So learning from their unique characteristics and then learning from the bad ones too,
Yeah.
right? Like we've all had a good and bad teacher, but my mom and sister are both teachers. So like I've taken that aspect of it and tried to build that into a baseball setting. Yeah.
What's one thing you've learned or maybe you've developed because of you having some family members who are teachers?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is patience, right? Actually, a really good coach said this to me in the fall because I was losing my mind over, oh man, first year coach here, new players, new recruits. Like, I just need these guys to pick it up a little bit. And you're having one of those weeks, which we all have in any capacity. And just realizing that they're just human, right? In baseball, of all things, is the biggest game of failure. And like setting yourself back in that mode. Like, my mom is an English teacher, and that takes patience. She had to have patience with me writing a paper. Cam, the comma does not go there. Like, that is a run-on sentence. So she would always talk in a very calming voice of, okay, we're going to try this again, we're going to try this again. And that's a feedback loop, right? That's me getting my arm path into slot, that's me getting my release into the right point when I'm throwing a slider, right? And it all connects in a way. But I think patience is a huge thing because these processes they're not overnight.
Yeah.
They take time.
I'm sure her patience now is different. It's probably, oh, I get a paper from a kid. Like I can tell ChatGPT just used just like this, right? As an English teacher. Does she complain about that a
Yes.
lot?
Teaches at a younger
Okay.
age where she's not dealing with that. But I do talk to our professors on campus a little bit, and they're like, your boys better not be using this. Like, they better get it from their own brain. That is, you can't do that. You can't do it at all. So that's a good point.
Cam, now you've been at the college level and you've been at the professional level. Similarities, differences in terms of how pitchers are developed.
Yeah, I'd say in general, there's an obvious difference, right? The timeline, we have pitchers for such a long time. Like, we really do. And we do have a lot of control of what are we going to do this summer? Are we going to go play summer ball? Are we going to go into private instruction? And I'm very pro go play, but some guys really need to step back and be in the private sector a little bit. And some guys just need to go on vacation and get away from it
Yeah.
as well. But it really is case dependent. I would say I try to model it as similar as I can in terms of individualized skill optimization. Like, I want that to be a huge piece still, right? And this is where I think a lot of programs are very different than I am. Like, I don't find myself building pitchers up to 4, 5, 6 innings in the fall at a time. Like, I would rather keep their workloads light. I don't think, first of all, most injuries come from fatigue anyways. Like a UCL injury, UCLs become the most susceptible through fatigue, right? The higher the chronic workload and the less prepared you are to do that. It's like running a marathon, right? If I just ran out there right now and ran a marathon, like, my hammy's
Yeah.
gonna tweak on me, right? I'm gonna need some time. So I want to keep the work low. Like, I want to keep the work low because I think the greatest stimulus is reached at lower volumes. I think the ability to gain velocity, that's not going to happen throwing 100 pitch bullpens. I think it's like hitting for you guys, right? You throw in a blast motion sensor, you're not going to go out there and take 500 swings that day. You're going to take 50 of your best swings, and you're probably going to give them some time in between to do that, right? So yeah, I want to keep the volume a little bit lower and keep like the individualized skill process and learning from our failures and even our strengths in the past, and keep promoting those as like the most important piece of a fall. I think that's different. We have a lot of guys who I write guys ACR programs, so acute versus chronic workload. I'm managing the short-term workload versus the long-term workload, and we're building up strategically. And we're actually going to hit like a little bit of a plateau toward the end of the fall, say like after a fall World Series, and let these guys deload a little bit and then scoop that back up, but very progressively. So I'm going to write programs for guys in that way, which I see a lot of teams in pro ball are doing. They've taken complete control of that. You used to see guys show up to spring training completely out of shape, completely just not ready to handle like even a 20 pitch bullpen because they hadn't picked up a baseball. Now it's like, hey man, you're going to have this throwing program. You're going to send me your pulse reports or whatever it is so that I know your chronic workload's high enough to handle the rigors of throwing a baseball. So we're going to manage that I think that's going to be like one of the biggest things that we're going to manage. We're huge on ball flight preferences, right? We don't just teach guys based on what Cam wants. We are going to teach guys on how their unique characteristics present themselves, right? I don't recruit the same player. I don't develop the same player. We try to develop everyone individually. Like we have guys who throw from here and guys who throw from down there, right? So just trying to create the best ball flight possible and using portable TrackMan units and stadium TrackMan units and just try to make guys as difficult at bats as possible, including a lot of the things that we've already mentioned. So I think that's a huge one. The overarching factor of the fact that I continue to work with pro clients and then I have the college guys, like the biggest thing in differences. And honestly, I think you notice this on the hitting side more than even the pitching side, but the skill acquisition phases are just so different. The autonomy, like the autonomous phase of a Bruce Zimmerman who's been playing professional baseball for such a long time, or a Jimmy Herget or a Brad Lord, it's so just roll out of bed and I'm good and I'm going to throw strikes and I'm probably going to throw pretty hard. So everything feels very much more like 1% or 0.1% when you're making changes. And a lot of the changes are going to be more on environment, right? I think some of the best hitting coaches I've ever seen are the guys who promote like the most challenging environments. And that's what I try to do on the throwing side with these guys. I think change is a strong word. It's like you're doing something different. Me changing someone's mechanics who is already playing at a pretty high level, playing in the big leagues or doing things like that. I think that's a terrible thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to take a huge risk that will not outweigh the reward. It just won't. So I think the stimulus is going to just be very heavily predicated on the environment. What are we working on? How can you work on this without affecting something else? How can we work on this slider shape without ruining your fastball shape? How can we work on this slider release without changing your fastball release that's been so successful for you? How can we sturdy up the lead leg and get the pelvis to rotate quicker into the lead leg without affecting your trunk, right? So you have to look at all these factors like very deep diving in a way where it's risk management. But again, like the college arm does have the ability to change. Like there typically are going to be things that you need to change and you need to make these drastic improvements on. So you could take a little bit more aggressive approach in the development sector with those guys. But again, if they already have a unique tool, they're already doing something at a really high level, you do want to nurture that and make sure that everything around that is preserving that one piece that they do so great.
You mentioned lower workload for you in the fall for your guys, and I started thinking a little bit, and I've thought about this before, going back to the Tommy John epidemic that everyone always talks about, and again, a gazillion times more about pitching than I do, but as kind of like an outsider, a 10,000-foot view, I see like, okay, a lot of Tommy John, but I also see, what do we think causes that? Okay, it's throwing a lot. People have always, you hear about people throwing all the time. Like, to me, it comes down to the type of stress that's put on the arm. For example, if I'm 13 years old or 14 years old and I'm going to showcases to throw, there's a different type of anxiety. There's a different type of adrenaline that's pumping through me versus if I'm in the backyard throwing to a catcher and Cam's just sitting there watching me, right? To me, if you clearly disagree with me, I'd love to hear that. But I think that's just the type of stress. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think honestly, I like the example that you used with the 13, 14-year-old because it segues me perfectly into this of like, why are we putting so little volume? Like we are going to put intensity as like a part, like we want short intensity, right? When you're in the weight room, you want these short intensities of a max squat in 4 or 5 rep settings, right? But we're not doing 500 of them, right? We're not fatiguing ourselves so that we can't go do this 5 days later. But I think a huge part of what I'm getting at with the volume piece is we're keeping the volume light there to prep ourselves for when that volume's going to be higher, right? And you say a 13, 14-year-old, they can't handle volume with intensity. They don't have the brakes, right, to handle the engine that they're trying to develop. So we're literally trying to develop the brakes all fall, right? We're trying to create the physicality, the deceleration aspects, all these things to handle the rigors of doing high intensity for a longer period. So we're trying to build this foundation, but you can't build the foundation by creating this huge external environment around it. All these externalities are not going to help you focus on the one piece. So huge part of our fall is get stronger, do things really well in a short spurt setting, once we hit that end of the fall period, we can start loading that and we can start training progressively where it doesn't feel like, I think like the worst thing you can do for yourself is, especially as a younger guy, is, oh, I just finished basketball season and like first game of the spring, even though I haven't thrown with intensity all year, I haven't done this many times in a row, but I'm just going to go out there and throw 100 max effort pitches versus the local middle school team. Like, that's literally the worst thing you can do. So we're prepping to do that. We're prepping these guys for a long season. We're prepping them with their best stuff, with their unique skills. But if you don't build the foundation, it doesn't matter. They're just not going to be able to do it for a long time. They're going to do it for 1, 2, 3 weeks. And the beginning of the year is the most dangerous point. In the MLB, there's this huge curve that, like, through the last 2 weeks of spring training, through like the first 4 weeks of the MLB season, it's Tommy John Tommy John rates go crazy. So we have to have guys over prepared for that early part of the season. And you can't just jump into it. You got to progress it very slowly, like the little mountain.
Cam, how do you go about getting some pitchers to buy in if they're not listening to you? They don't really want to get on board. Like you had mentioned, like, hey, first year with the program, and these aren't the guys that you recruited, right? Maybe they're the guys that were there when you came in, and maybe some are hesitant. Anything that you've seen work for you or others, what advice would you give to other coaches listening who they may be competing with a private sector coach who's telling them to do one thing, and it's like, man, it's complete opposite of what we're trying to get them to do. I'm sure you've already dealt with that, but what advice do you have?
Yeah. So honestly, for the most part, especially coming into this fall, most of the players are going to have been guys who I recruited, which is nice. I had the whole summer last year to recruit. Okay. So we do have a good chunk of those guys at that part. But I think more than anything, like, I have to drop my ego sometimes. And as much as a player does, right? A player has to be humble. They have to, I like when guys have an ego on the mound and they have that little edge. But like when we're in the lab, let's figure it out, right? The biggest thing for me is if I'm going to teach someone something, like, I'd better have a reason for it. Or I don't think they should buy into what I say just because Cam says it, right? Just because Cam has experience, just because Cam did this, whatever. I think I should actually have an objective reasoning or rationale, and we should be able to see this thing eye to eye. Yeah, so like always teaching why a change makes sense, or why an adaptation makes sense, why a stimulus makes sense. But if I bring upon a case that's like not tangible, objective, and I get pushback, I really don't have any ammo to go off of there. Like I'm just like, I just want you to do it because I want you to do it. I don't think that's good enough reason. So I am on the side of players being in control of their careers. When we do, and we absolutely do, we have players who work with private sector facilities and things like that. But I want to be in the fight with these guys, right? I want to understand, hey, you're going to X, Y, and Z facility up in Tampa this summer. What is our goal here? And I want to be in that with them. I want these guys to go there. I want them to take control of their career, but I want them to understand the things that they really need to work on, the things that they can express, the things that they can do. Like I'm working with a couple of our guys tomorrow going to a biomechanist, and I already have my thoughts of, hey, we did this well this year, we did this really poorly, we're doing this on the biomechanics side, but now we're going to get objective data to tell us, like, good. Right. Good. Your hypothesis was in the right directions. I never want people to just believe me just because I say it. I better have good reasoning. So it puts a lot of pressure on me as well, but I think that's part of the job, you know?
When do you recommend someone go and get, you said you're taking a couple of your guys to biomechanists or they do 3D motion capture. When would you recommend a pitcher does that stuff?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's the best to do at this point of the year. Right now.
But for college guys or high school too?
Not for high school. I wouldn't say for somebody showcasing. I think if you're going to get a mocap and you're going to create a plan, like I think like stimulus in the weight room, for instance, a lot of times I'm sure you've done like a 4-week like fitness program or something, but a real stimulus doesn't happen for 12 weeks for the most part. Like it just doesn't, whether it's hitting, whether it's pitching, whatever. I think you should have a good 3 to 6 months to take this action plan, build it out through movement assessments, build it out through motion cap. You get like force plate data, whatever it is. And I think you should have 3 to 6 months to go work on this. And it is good to keep retesting is the other thing. It's good to come back month by month and be like, okay, I did another mocap to test if my internal rotation on my rear leg was enabling my pelvis to rotate. I think those things are worth retesting. So right now, it's a great time for our college guys to come back for next fall, because now you got June, you got July, you got August, but you don't just have June, July, and August. You have September, you have October, you have November. And then from there, it's okay, we got to get ready to go play a game in February, right? So then it turns a little bit more competitive. But all fall, we're going to be working on it with these guys, right? You just built out an action plan at X, Y, and Z private sector. That action plan has been sent to me. I'm helping along with the process. And now I'm really going to help and take control of that process with you throughout September and October and November. We're going to start to see some of those goals that you had come into fruition.
Great stuff. This could be applicable to you, like when you're going out recruiting, but it could also be something that you've seen elsewhere. Have you ever seen a player who is maybe an under-recruited pitcher turn into just an absolute monster on the mound? And if so, like looking back, why was that?
Yeah, honestly, that's way too good of a question, way too applicable in a way. Our Friday guy this year was the absolute epitome of that, where he was like a fine JUCO player. Like he was fine. Came in, preferred walk on. You're like, this guy's got a little bit of arm talent. We'll see how it goes. And then you look at the body, you're like 6'3", 6'4", super long torso, super long arms. The limbs were off the charts. And then you're like, what does this look like 20 pounds from now? Mm-hmm. The 20 pounds goes on the body. The stimulus is super quick. I talk a lot about skill acquisition and in the autonomous phase. Like when we would work on something or try to develop something, like it happened a lot more like this and a lot less of that slow pattern where you're banging your head against the wall. You're like, wow, you did that in 4 throws. That's pretty impressive. You made a serious change in 4 throws. And then the mechanics side gets into it. Also, the level of training in the past. I'm going to give you like one of my big recruiting things. I love recruiting a guy who's had a low level of training in the past. Like, when I have kids, like, I am not going to teach them how to pitch. Like, I'm going to let them go play shortstop and throw the ball around and just chuck it around and go figure it out. And small tips here and there, but promote a good environment. Guys who just like haven't sat in a warehouse with a coach telling, get their arm up when the foot goes down. And I'm so out on it. Like, I would rather the guy go play football and play quarterback for 5 years than that. And then when they get into this physical foundation where like we can actually instruct and start to build like a real engine on the guy, that's when it goes really quick. So our Friday guy, Grady Bivens, like I had really felt like that. Wasn't a good high school player, was like a fine JUCO player. And then this year it came out and the scouts took a lot of notice and he ended up being a really hot commodity down here. This was a guy who we weren't fighting off other schools for offers here or anything, but he came in the fall, he worked really hard, he took to our culture and our environment really well. And you could tell he really wanted to be here. He really wanted to see other guys do well. He took a lot of things on the chin. He took a ton of accountability for this year and what he can make of it. Even with that mindset, it doesn't always work in that linear pattern of just stimulus through the roof, but things went really well for him. He had a lot of things coming in here that we figured would end up pretty good, and it just ended up being a perfect fit in that way.
So you mentioned that he came in, he was 6'3", long torso. Obviously, you said you guys weren't fighting off other teams. He was a preferred walk-on, but when you're watching a guy pitch, what are the first things you notice? Is it the body type? Is it arm action? What's the first thing that you just naturally gravitate towards?
I'd say more than anything, like uniqueness. Like uniqueness is amazing. Somebody does something that other people don't do. Like you're in the 90th percentile at something. So I recruit very heavily toward uniqueness. Like even on the hitting side, like you just have to do something so well for it to make sense for us. That's not perfect for anywhere. Like you can see guys at the Division I level who are really big draft prospects and people will be like, he's hitting 270, 280. And then you're like, oh, the OBP's around 480. The stolen bases are there. He's doing a couple things amazingly well, even though he's only like a 40 at this thing. What I saw with him, for instance, was there was a lot more the present value of things or what he was doing in the moment. And this is a huge part to getting a preferred walk on or someone like that is you want to see future value in them. You want to see there is an avenue for this guy to have future value. And this guy off the charts, there felt like future value. The slider was already pretty good. The fastball shape was not good, but those things can be changed. The release characteristics for a breaking ball were very good, and we were going to have the ability to keep widening that profile and keep building a deeper arsenal. There wasn't a changeup, but he already had the ulnar deviation qualities to create seam shift effects. So sinker, changeup were probably in there. And then you just start doing this math equation in your head, and you're like, if he does these things that I'm thinking, that's a pretty good profile. Now you toss on another 2-3 miles per hour to him if he gets stronger. And that's just what happened. He ended up throwing a lot harder, getting a lot stronger, and the arsenal came with it. And it was just like, wow, this is nice.
Why did he get, and if this is like secret sauce, you don't have to tell me, but why did he get a preferred walk-on versus a scholarship? What was missing for you? And maybe if you guys, already spent the money elsewhere, maybe that's the reason, but I'm just curious for people to know why he got a preferred walk-on versus someone else getting a scholarship. I know if you went back now, knowing what you know and how well he did, I'm sure he'd be getting a scholarship, but what was kind of your mindset at the time of like preferred walk-on, no money?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is time of the year. Like, we're like being honest with you, I think he was probably a fringe-ish scholarship guy, maybe a little bit better than that. Maybe I'm trying to create too much of a storyline here. It was lack of exposure for him. And then the other piece is I think a lot of guys are getting bad advice, especially in the transfer portal, high school guys, whatever, where, unfortunately or fortunately, however you look at it, like these aren't 4-year commitments anymore. Anyone who says that is a liar. We have guys going 4 years, 4 schools, and it'll turn into 5 years, 5 schools soon. And guys will hang on for the best offer in their head with a dream school that's not out there, that they're not good enough to play for. And then you get to even this point of the year where the guys, yeah, man, like you're my number one, you're a great offer, you're this, you're that. But I just have a good feeling something potentially a little bit more shiny is going to come along when you get so late into it. Like we spend money, like we can't get guys into our school super, super late in the year. Like some people have a little bit more autonomy than us, but it gets a little unrealistic for guys. And I think a huge problem is them not having a great leader or somebody who's been in their shoes at this point of their career who just steps up and is like, man, you got to go play. Like you got to go develop there. You got to go do this. He took a massive chance on us in the hopes of development. And it just all lined up for him. Like it just all lined up. And he's going to play in the Cape Cod League this summer. And he has all types of teams on him for the draft and things like that. So you're just like, wow, yep, good. Everything went good. This investment worked out for you. The hopes that you had worked out for you. And like, you just see it in his face every time he talks about it. So I think that's super rewarding as a coach.
Cam, you touched on it a little bit right there, but let's say you're not coaching in college right now. You're 10,000 foot view, advice you would give to players in the recruiting process, knowing everything you know, and you just talked a little bit about the transfer portal and grass is greener and all these different things. Like what advice would you give to families?
Yeah. Is your goal to play at the highest level? Is your goal? And honestly, like it never insults me when a guy tells me his goal is to go play at LSU. Like, why would that insult me? That's an amazing goal. You're going to make money playing. You're going to play in front of 10,000+ people. That's an awesome, awesome goal. My little brother transferred from Wake Forest to Arkansas. It's the nature of the game, right? He didn't transfer 5 times. He did it once for his grad year, and it worked out for him. He got drafted by the White Sox and got to play in pro ball and stuff like that. I think you should recognize your goal, and is your goal to play at the highest level, whatever your highest level is. Some guys that's the New York Yankees, some guys that's playing at Oklahoma, some guys that's playing at Eckerd, some guys that's playing at U Tampa, wherever that is, right? And now you should put yourself in a spot to attain that goal. Some guys can reach that goal already. Unfortunately, that's 0.1% of people who are already able to reach that goal, right? So I think before anything, you should always ask yourself, what is going to push me or put me in position of that goal? And we're always going to say development of the person, development of the player, development physically of the player, mentally of the player, all these things. And then you have to search that out. What is realistic in the spot that you're at right now that's going to allow you to further yourself in that development? Yeah, I understand some people, like, money is always going to be a huge thing, financially driven. But if you're within the means, you're able to do something that puts you in the best development phase that you possibly can. You're going to need to put yourself in that environment, whether it's a year, 2 years, and that's going to lead you to the best predictive outcome possible.
Awesome. And it's been phenomenal, man. Really happy we connected. We got you on. We definitely need to have you back on again. If people want to follow you, what's your Twitter handle?
Yeah, I think my Twitter handle it's Cam Lanzilli, but it might be at Lanzilli.
Well,
Cam,
we'll find it. I'll put it in the show notes and we'll link it up there. But again, man, great stuff. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.